Hi there, this is Steve Spurrier. You can join University of Florida Hall of Famer Shane Matthews and also the two-time SEC Player of the Year every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about the Florida Gators, including news, analysis, opinions, and some of the biggest names in sports. You can find him on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Or you can watch him live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter.
Well, good Friday to you, or happy Friday to you. Seth Harp on Sports. My man JC, I'm pinch hitting today, the backup quarterback here on PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Hey, it's the eve of Georgia, Florida, Georgia, depending on your perspective, of course. I've got to experience this sucker 6 times from the other perspective when I was up in Georgia. And now, geez, JC, is it 9 years? 9 years on this side of the perspective. This is going to be a lot of fun. Pot Up with Matthews in the morning. Coming to you from the Crime Prevention Security System studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Also, I am hopping in today. JC hopping in today, courtesy of Duffield Home Improvements, your local roofing, siding, and window contractor serving Gainesville and the surrounding area since 1986. If you got questions for us via Facebook Live, Meldon Law, the only official injury law firm partner of the Florida Gators. YouTube questions, courtesy of Quality Plumbing, residential and commercial plumbing services, emergency repair since 1984. Our name says it all. JC, 5 of the last 6 belong to the Dogs. The last 2 by double digits, actually. 4 of the last 5 by double digits. This game hasn't really been close and competitive at the end, with the exception of 1 or 2 games the last decade. Have the Gators closed the gap to make this a puncher's chance in the fourth quarter?
Well, Seth, first of all, I just want to say I'm glad to be back. Been gone for a week. I was out in Arizona, and what a beautiful place. If you ever get a chance to go to Sedona, Arizona, you must see it. It is the most incredible, visually impressive town of all time. At the Grand Canyon, I was wearing an Alabama shirt, and this fella came up and asked me if I was from Alabama. And I said, no, I'm from Gainesville, Florida. He said, Gainesville, Florida. He says, that's Florida Gator country. I said, it's right. Yeah, that's where I was born and raised, and that's where I'm from. But I said, well, what about you? He said, well, I'm from Georgia. I said, you're from Georgia? Okay. Anyway, his name is Mike Hawkins. So a big shout out to my friend Mike Hawkins, who I met at the Grand Canyon. But when he said he was from Georgia, I said, well, you must be loving these last 2 years. He says, no, I've absolutely hated it. I said, well, what are you talking about, Mike? He goes, well, my favorite team, my second favorite team is the team that's playing against Georgia. And he lives in Atlanta, Georgia. And so that tells you that he is a what, Seth? He is a
Georgia Bulldog.
Georgia Tech fan.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Because, his second favorite team is the one that's playing the Georgia Bulldogs. So we talked about this weekend's game, and he loves his Yellow Jackets, but it's been rough for them against the Bulldogs. But they hate them too. They hate the Georgia Bulldogs. Me growing up in this place, Seth, you can imagine from the days of Vince Dooley to the days of Steve Spurrier against Ray Goff, it has been one-sided in many different occasions. It seems to be a streaky series. And so here we have it, a game on October 28th, one day from my 59th trip around the sun. And Seth, by the way, the Florida Gators will be the best team that the Georgia Bulldogs will have faced, in spite of the fact that they played Kentucky already, because of the way Florida's playing. And that's how I feel this game is going to go, because I think Florida will be able to stay with Georgia if they can play some defense, match the physicality of Georgia, and score some points by being aggressive. Aerial. Get those wide receivers 1, 3, 6, and 8. Get them out there. That's what Shane says. 1, 3, 6, and 8. And so let them run and let Graham Mertz do what he's been doing all year long. And if that happens, we're going to have us a good game in Jacksonville. So that's my opening prologue. I do think it's been great that you travel as far as the Grand Canyon and people will talk about Florida, Georgia. But growing up, it was tough, but then it was great. And now here we are back on the slide again. So maybe Florida can shock the world and stay with these guys. But they have to be physical with this team.
I see that it opened up at 20.5, and it quickly went down
Good
to
God.
14.5, and it went back up to 14.5. I wish
It's
I'd have been I wish I'd have been around my computer when it was 20.5,
20.
JC.
Well,
Going to Sizzler this weekend.
Well, I got it at 15.5 in Arizona because unlike the state of Florida, in Arizona, you can take this thing right here and go to one of your favorite little sites that one day will sponsor this podcast, and you can go ahead and wager on the game. Believe it or not, you can put $10 on a game and have fun watching it and enjoy it differently if you want to. But you don't have to, and that's the thing, is you have the choice over there. So 15.5 is the number I got, and I took the Gators, Seth Harp. I took them for 15.5 points. Dear God, if they can't stay within 15.5 against a team that's missing its best offensive player, then forget about it. Forget about it. I'm off them for the rest of the season. I don't care what happens after this.
We're going to look at the
structure. At least play close.
Yep, look at the structure of this. You got any comments for us? Fire away, courtesy of the Titan MRI text line. There you go. So if you got any questions, fire away. And again, I told you, Quality Plumbing, Meldon Law, the whole 9 yards. If you want to chime in, that's how you do so via our social media platforms. Okay, no Brock Bowers, exit stage right. So you have a guy that we saw in the Georgia-Auburn game that was an Auburn team that's mediocre at best. A guy that completely took over a game in the second half because Georgia was competitive into the late stages of the third quarter of that sucker. And now you have a question in your mind if you're not only a Georgia fan, but if you're a college football fan. What does this Bulldog football team look like without what you may say is the most important weapon to any team in the country, sans Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State? Because Brock Bowers to Georgia is what Travis Kelce is to Kansas City. Now, the difference is Patrick Mahomes isn't the quarterback of the Georgia Bulldogs, Carson Beck. So I am so fascinated to see what the dynamic of this offense is. I tell you this, though, JC, I think Florida would have been better off without a bye week because I think 2 weeks helps out Georgia exponentially more than it helps out Florida. Usually it's the reverse, but not in this case because Kirby Smart's now had 13 days, and this offense has had 13 days to come up with things without Brock Bowers. I think if you have 4 or 5 days, it's a different story.
I agree that game against South Carolina was Florida's best offensive day. Not defensive, but offensive. And I don't know what Georgia's plan is. I think it's pretty obvious they're going to try to run the ball a little bit, try to be physical with Florida. They watched the Kentucky tape. They also watched how South Carolina matriculated up and down the field. But for me, if we get into a shootout type of game, it's going to be on the shoulders of Graham Mertz and those guys 1, 3, 6, and 8 who are going to be catching balls. And you can throw Arliss Boardingham as many passes as you want to because he's the kind of guy that will be in that tight end spot that could take some of the attention away from the speedy guys that they're going to be probably trying to cover hard. And Graham Mertz, listen, for everything that's been going on, did you know, Seth, I read something with Shane 2 weeks ago. Before last weekend's game, listen to this, Seth. Graham Mertz has more passing yards before last week now than Dylan Gabriel, Sam Hartman, Bo Nix, Spencer Rattler, Quinn Ewers, and Jordan Travis. He's got more passing touchdowns than Spencer Rattler, Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, and Kyle McCord. Now, again, this is before last week. Better completion percentage than Michael Penix, Caleb Williams, Shedeur Sanders, Jaden Daniels, and Dylan Gabriel, and has fewer interceptions than Shedeur Sanders, Michael Penix, Sam Hartman, Caleb Williams, and J.J. McCarthy. That's Graham Mertz. That's the guy you got running up and down, running the offense against this Georgia Bulldog defense, which is vulnerable to passing mid to deep routes. I think Florida will attack, and that's how we're going to keep this game under control.
You know who he is? He's Kirk Cousins. He's a good quarterback. That's who Graham Mertz. He's a good quarterback. The question is, in a situation, if this team's down 24-20 in the fourth quarter, can he go Super Graham and put a team in his backpack and carry him?
Well, he did against South Carolina.
He did.
That was on, and that was South Carolina, but it was at South Carolina. Georgia's better than they are, but that's still a game where on fourth down, this guy answered the bell. They rang the bell, said, "Is anybody home?" And Graham Mertz and Ricky Pearsall said, "We're home. Here we are." And they went ahead and scored. And that's what I was hoping for, that I would see. That's the first time I saw it all year that they actually played under pressure and did something that I thought was special. Now, you're right. This week off, it kind of gives you this lull, right? It's like, oh, God, we're just getting started. And now they're they're off for 14 days, and they've got to pick it right back up. And I hope that's what we see, because I hate Georgia. I absolutely loathe Georgia. And I've always done it. I've always felt that way. They just suck. And, Herschel Walker was the guy that ruined my childhood. And then it was Bo Jackson in college. And, since then, thank God Nick Saban showed up. But this is what's happened. Steve Spurrier showed up. But really, this is the big game for me, man. When it comes down to Florida football, this is the one. It's always on my birthday weekend. It's always the game that I circle on the calendar every stinking single year, and I earmark the Georgia game for anything else that's important in life during the fall. It's always before or after the Georgia game. So this is the big one for me, Joe. This is the one that I want to see Florida compete. And if that stadium is half empty by halftime, I'm turning the damn thing off. Unless, of course, Florida's winning by 30. But I'm turning it off if they're empty at halftime. And that won't happen. They're going to score on this team.
So I need to ask you this then with you. If you hate Georgia that much,
hey,
am I – because I've been working with Dan and the gang at Porsche in Ocala for a certain red automobile. You're not going to key it, are you? I got to talk to Dan. If I got to talk to Dan and the gang there, maybe I need to pull out of this.
Well, no, I mean, I don't mind the color red. I'm a Christian guy, right? But cherry red is not good. It's not even pretty. And cherry red is just, it's soft, but they're not soft. They're going to bring a physical nature to this game that Florida must respond to, unlike what we saw in Lexington, Kentucky. And if that happens, I think Florida's going to stay with these guys. And I'm going to collect on that 15.5 once I get to a legal state again.
No, it's good stuff. Dan, let's turn on the gang. I'm just kidding. I'm still interested in the car. All right.
You're going to get the car, Seth. If you get that red Porsche, you better show us a picture, and let's see what it's got.
No, I'm not married, so no kids.
Yeah.
There's like,
is it a midlife crisis thing? Kind of? Is that what
that was years ago, man. I dyed the hair. That's how I took care of that.
Okay.
All right. So here's the thing. Speaking of colors, this game, and JC, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I think I know I'm right on the West Coast, East Coast. I love. The one thing that's cool, and I'm going to miss about the SEC, I don't know what filter, I don't know how it works, but the colors and the vibrancy of SEC football just pops on CBS. It does. There's just something about the camera work and the colors, and maybe it's the color schemes of the schools, but it just pops. I was thinking about this because USC and UCLA do this. And with all the talk about jerseys and uniforms this week, with the black jerseys, which we can get into in a second, but with USC and UCLA, what they do is, of course, home's white, roads colors, or vice versa. Sorry. And what's happened is both schools have decided that they're going to wear their, UCLA is going to wear their blue and USC is going to wear their garnet, their red. Of course, one's a 15-yard penalty because you're not wearing the right jersey. The other team declines it. So they have this blue and red, awesome looking, USC, UCLA showdown every year. What do we think about a blue, red jersey, Florida, Georgia? Because I know we do white. Yeah. What do we think about that? Because all the talks about black jerseys, I'd love to see Florida in their blues and Georgia's in their reds.
Well, we saw that a few times, I think, when Shane played. Yes, when Shane played, we saw that. And I'm fine with that. But, the big thing we grew up with, all the old Gator fans, the silver breeches of Georgia and those white uniforms. And there goes Lindsey Scott down the sideline. That's something you always remember in this series, whether you loved it or hated it. That's what they wore. They're whites with the silver breeches, and the Gators were in their god-awful orange. Well, things changed when they went with the blue, which is what they should have always done. And that's when Spurrier showed up and dominated that series, I think losing one time to Georgia. So I'm all for it there, Seth. If we're going to go with uniforms, go with the one you play your best in. Now, Florida's best game offensively was in white with blue pants, and it happened to be against South Carolina, in my opinion. They made more plays that looked different than what they had done all year long, wearing those white shirts with the blue pants. I mean, whatever you want to do. Who's the home team? Is Florida the home team? I don't even remember.
Yeah, right, because we lost all. Yeah, because that's one less game I had to send to. Yeah, 3 home games this year, right? The home games this year have been who? They have been, come on, Seth, you're better than this. They will be Arkansas, they will have been Tennessee, and they will have been Vanderbilt.
Yeah. So Florida will be in blue. So, okay, great. Let's go. I mean, I just want to see points, man. I want to see aggressive play calling down the field. I have said this. If I've said it once, I've said it 10,000 times. The way you beat these Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart's defense is you attack downfield. Alabama did it with Jamison Williams and John Mechie. Ohio State did it with Marvin Harrison Jr. and whoever else. It has been done with Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield with those guys. You throw that ball down the field against Georgia and you will have success. If they want to play short, if they want to do these slants and these little digs routes and all this kind of crap, trying to run the ball all day long, we're going to be turning this thing off in the third quarter. So I hope that's not the case, but I'm not the coach and I don't make $7 million to do it. So
let's check these messages courtesy of Quality Plumbing, Titan MRI, and Meldon Law. Brandon writing in today. We used to wear those jerseys. We used to double up like that. Brandon, need to bring that back. Andy McIntosh, when's the last time you saw a Hail Mary untouched in the middle of the end zone? Yeah, it did happen
last night. Last night.
Yeah.
Last night. I mean, Chris Godwin, if he just looks up, the Bucks win. I mean, it's all you had to do is just look up, Chris. But you know that you could have called 3 different pass interference penalties, I guess, on both sides on that last play. But it blew my mind how the ball literally fell right by the guys.
Fell right in the middle. Yep,
untouched.
Toby, Florida's front seven needs to play their best game in the trenches and get some sacks. Yeah, I think the big thing in things like this is when you have a game like this and you're a double-digit underdog and it's a rivalry, you can't turn the ball over. And I think if it's easier said than done, right, JC? But if it's a situation where Florida has 2 fewer turnovers than Georgia, they probably have themselves a 1-possession game and a chance in the fourth quarter. PodUp with Matthews in the morning is brought to you in part by Silverback Concrete. Silverback Concrete, family-led team of heavy concrete specialists that build commercial structures with unrivaled quality. Silverback Concrete, you stand on it, we stand by it. Something else about this, and you can X's and O's it, and look, you and Shane's hammered that out. Here's the thing about this. In my mind, I can't really think of the last time the favorite lost it. I'm sure it's in there somewhere if I really want to rack my brain and go back. Probably been a decade since the team that was favored, even if it's field goal touchdown, lost this sucker. So the other thing is, and it's the reality of the situation that we're in, next year may be the last time this thing's played there.
You think?
Well, just because if they're going to do a massive remodel in Jacksonville, it's not so much what's going on from the Gators' perspective, it's what's going on with the Jacksonville perspective. Because one way or another, JC, this is the truth of this situation, is that financially, any way that you look at it, Jacksonville's in one of 2 positions. They do the Stadium of the Future, $1 billion. It's a 2-year renovation, and you go to campuses. Or you go Atlanta and Tampa or whatever you want to do for those 2 years. Or if Jacksonville doesn't build it, then the stadium is going to be dilapidated in 5 years by industry standards. And it's not going to be what it was. It's not going to have the upkeep. The Jaguars are going to leave, and there'll be no reason to play there anymore. So coming up in the next, it's not next year's the last year of this contract, right? So 2025, the game's not going, the likelihood of 2025, that game being in Jacksonville is probably like 10%. So what I was going to ask you there's certain games that are just unique and special because of their location, not because, and the pageantry has a lot to do with it. I think of Texas and Oklahoma, right? Let's face it, when we were kids, younger, the Iron Bowl, I try to explain to the students at Florida, they get that name not because of toughness and awesomeness. They get that name because of Birmingham and where that game used to be played. Could you imagine if there were an NFL stadium in Birmingham, JC, and it was 50% Alabama and 50% Auburn in a state like what it is for Florida, Georgia, the atmosphere that sucker would be? So I'm sitting here asking you, those years that one way or another, let's say they remodel Jacksonville for 2 years. JC, do you want to see it to be a campus game? Do you want it to be Atlanta and Tampa? Do you want to keep it as a neutral site for those 2 years?
Yeah, I wouldn't care if they rotated all of that. And listen, I had a good time going to Athens when they beat Hines Ward and the crew by 50. And I had a good time when Eric Zaire came to Gainesville and they ran them up and down. They ran them all over the place. I mean, they ran them out of the building. It didn't bother me going on campus. I love Athens. I don't like Georgia as a football team, but I think the school and I think the campus is spectacular, and it's a great place. This tradition in Jacksonville is all we've grown up with and all we've known for most of these last 3 or 4 generations. And I don't mind keeping it this way, but nothing's changed. But so much has changed within Jacksonville. If they put an NFL stadium in this area, it won't be the Gator Bowl. It won't be the things that we've all grown up with. It'll be corporate entertainment once again in Jacksonville. So why not move it on campus? And I was reading about the college football playoff next year. Do you realize that the teams that'll have the bye weeks and the most higher seeds in the college football playoff will not have a game on campus, and they will be asking fans to travel 3 to 4 times straight to go through if they win it? And that is just not reasonable. I want more on campus stuff. I don't mind neutral site games very rarely, but once in a while. But every year, it's just getting to me to be more and more corporate. And the hotels know it, the airlines know it, and everybody is after your dollar and your money, your discretionary income. So if you keep it on campus, you can take care of some of those travel issues. You can take care of some of those needs that I don't think the people making the decisions understand. And I think it's a little tone deaf on college football's behalf that says, well, next year we're going to have a 12-team playoff. But if you win it, even if you have a bye, you're spending 3 weeks, 4 weeks on the road if you want to follow your team each game. It's just not practical. It's not realistic. It's junk. And I don't like that. I don't think that's right. We need more games on campus. So if this series went on campus for at least a couple of years, I don't think anybody would be upset about it.
Yeah, like they did in the 90s, and there you go. I think it is interesting, though, and as you go down the path of the playoff here, that 1 through 4 get buys, 5 through 12 as they try to rework this, right? Depending on who's going to host and who's going to go on the road. I look at a team like Air Force, right? I think Air Force would be that non-power 5 that would get the automatic bid by being the highest ranked non-power. JC, do you see any way at all in that 8-9 game that they ever let Air Force, the 8 seed, host Alabama, the 9? The SEC, the power is always going to be, they're never going to let Toledo, Boise State, they're never going to get to host USC or Notre Dame. The 8-9 game, the 8 seed will always be the bigger school.
Yeah, well, the 6th highest ranked, and I didn't mean to get on this 12-team playoff tangent on the day before the Florida-Georgia game, but I was making a point about neutral site games and what a pain in the ass they can be. And for Georgia, they've been complaining about coming to Jacksonville now here recently more and more since Kirby Smart showed up. Yeah. Kirby Smart wants to make this a home-and-home game because he wants recruits to show up. There's no reason to send recruits to this game in Jacksonville, in my opinion. It's not a home game, even though it's a home game. They don't play in Jacksonville except one time. And to me, I don't mind if we rotated. If we went home and home and then Jacksonville and then home and home and then Jacksonville, did it like that, something like that to get everybody involved. But again, when that stadium is built, my man, it's going to feel like you are sitting in some NFL facility. Not that that's a bad thing, because I'm all about comfort. I'm all about comfort, especially at my age. But I am saying right now, there is no college football atmosphere in an NFL corporate arena, except when we go to Atlanta and we go to the Mercedes Dome and everybody gets together for a championship game. That's the difference. It's a championship game. And this is just a regular season game. So to me, it's a big one. Obviously, it's our biggest one right now. And how about this, Seth? What could you have bet? What were the odds that after the Kentucky game, the Florida Gators would be sitting here a few weeks later with their fate in their own hands because Kentucky's now lost twice?
I went through and looked at this. There are 5 teams in the SEC that control their own destiny. Do you know who they are? I'm putting you on the spot, JC.
I know who they are. I know who they are. They are Alabama, LSU, Florida, Georgia, and Missouri.
Uh-huh.
I blew that one up. I mean, but that's great. That's great to have that kind of interest. And, here's Mississippi sitting around saying, hey, what about us? Yeah, we beat LSU. We beat LSU. So, Seth, answer this question. If LSU, Alabama, and Mississippi each have one loss, how does the tiebreaker work? I don't have the answer. But I don't know. If Georgia, Florida, and Missouri all have one loss, who gets the tiebreaker? I don't have the answer.
I know for a while there, again, it was the Big 12, not the SEC, that did this. If everybody has the same conference record, then they did the team that's the highest ranked. Well, under that scenario, it's going to be Ole Miss, because Ole Miss only have one loss, and Alabama and LSU will each have 2. Well, I don't know if they do that anymore. You know what I mean? Inside the conference, I don't know if they do that anymore. I know this, though. If you get yourself an Ole Miss Missouri SEC championship, JC, the world will cave in on itself. We're not going to get that. But
it's kind of like that Texas-Arizona World Series. My God. I mean, what were those odds? That they would sweep the Dodgers, beat the Phillies, and sweep the Brewers. I mean, the Diamondbacks, and then we've got those glorious Texas Rangers who win 4 games in Houston. What were those odds? So, I mean, it's
you know what's funny about that?
Like, you got to play.
In the past, when I've gone through our scheduling at the station, that I try to carry every night. I put, because we're the home of the Bucks, the Lightning, the Rays, all the Gator sports. JC, in the past, I've only been able to carry 2 World Series games because of conflicts, or the Rays play the Dodgers. I think we carried 3 of the 6 because we had Gator sporting events on. Guess what? The way the schedule works this year, we can carry all 7. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You got to the 1 year we actually could carry all of them. I get the matchup. And when your number one storyline is that the manager could win his 4th World Series.
Yeah.
That shows you how the pageantry is going to be.
Well, it's great for those folks in Dallas, but the folks in Phoenix, man, I went to game 4 of the Diamondbacks Phillies game in Phoenix last Friday night, a week ago today, and it is spectacular. They're having so much fun out there. And by the way, Phoenix is really hot. But it's really hot. But the Diamondbacks play indoors. It was a great experience to watch them beat the Phillies. They did it 6-5. It was late inning heroics, home runs, all this. They were down 4-2 late, and it was a great experience for me to see what it's like in an Arizona Diamondbacks playoff game. And Texas is the same thing. Both these games will be indoors, climate controlled, and both these teams' games. And I think we're going to see a very interesting World Series in spite of what the TV marketing folks are commiserating about right now.
Hey, the long balls ruled this postseason, so we'll see what happens here. PodUp with Matthews in the morning is a service of Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. 1966 HBC beer available at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Gator Games in the Swamp and select retail outlets. Crisp American Lager. 1966 HBC beer. Drink one of those with one of those pork chops out there, baby. That is excellent stuff. It's Spurrier's. Okay, I got a couple other questions as we pivot into this game. Let's go a little more in depth in it. Coming up next, I've got 3 questions I'm going to ask JC. Okay? All right, so I want you to start thinking about it.
I've got one question for you, too, when we get back.
And one of them is going to be about the black jerseys that have taken over social media, that this is somehow going to melt this Gator football team like snowmen in an Arkansas game that's a week away. So I'm going to ask JC that next.
I think the weather's getting better. I think the weather's getting better.
We reached halftime here on PodUp with Matthews in the morning.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Campus USA, put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, watch. Duffield Home Improvements for your window, siding, and roofing needs. Radware, your local provider of promotional products, uniforms, and apparel. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Silverback Concrete, Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Radware, F45, Quality Plumbing. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Q Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Thursday, November the 16th, come celebrate the release of our Spurrier's Gridiron Grill Lugo's Risky Rum. This exclusive release features a special spread of our farm-to-table food, rum cocktails, raffles, and a meet and greet with me. Each ticket includes a bottle of Spurrier's Single Barrel Select Whiskey Rum, and I'll sign the bottle if you'd like. So get your ticket before they sell out at spurriers.com.
Your eyes don't deceive you. Shane did not get better looking. Seth Harp, Harp on Sports. JC, I'm kidding, Shane.
Oh,
Here on this Friday, getting you fired up for the artist formerly known as the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. PodUp with Matthews in the morning, coming to you from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Also, you have any questions, fire away via Facebook Live. Let's see here. Meldon Law, the only official injury law firm and accident partner of the Florida Gators. YouTube, Quality Plumbing, residential commercial plumbing services, emergency repair since 1984. Titan MRI, there with you with the text line 352-353-7465. And also the guests, myself, JC, courtesy of Duffield Home Improvements, your local roofing, siding, and window contractor, serving Gainesville, surrounding areas since 1986.
He put my roof up.
Did he?
Bill Duffield, he's done 2 roofing jobs for me in my life. And they get it done over there. So, Seth, let me ask you this question. Well, it just slipped my mind. Did you know, though, that I heard a guy yesterday say that he felt Kirby Smart has done one of his better coaching jobs this year with the Georgia Bulldogs, even though he's got so many great 5-star, 4-star type players. And then my response to that was, well, if he's a candidate for Coach of the Year and has done one of his best coaching jobs with Georgia, who have they played that's been ranked? Now, maybe it was Kentucky. I don't know. But have you seen their schedule? They haven't played anybody. Michigan's played no ranked teams either. And so, if you're going to be the Coach of the Year, at least have a game where you're playing somebody that's been ranked and you beat them pretty badly. And I think that happened with the Kentucky Wildcats. But that was a home game for Georgia. Missouri's a home game for Georgia. They played Auburn on the road, and they played Vanderbilt on the road. Who have they played? Yeah. Who has the Georgia Bulldogs played that's made you say, wow, that was impressive? Wow. Okay, they blew out Kentucky. After what Kentucky did to Florida, that was the only time I can give you a Georgia wow moment. But we know what Kentucky is now. They're Kentucky. So Georgia, I don't know. I think Nick Saban's done a better coaching job than Kirby Smart, to be honest with you, with all the players he lost and his new quarterback that he's had under center this year. So to me, I don't know why everybody's slurping on Kirby right now, but he's undefeated against a bunch of lousy teams. When Alabama was playing Texas and Florida was playing Utah, Georgia was playing Middle Tennessee State and Ball State or something like that. So I don't want to hear about Georgia. Georgia
to me had 2 games on their schedule this year. The toughest game on their schedule this year is at Tennessee.
I guess.
Who's taken a little bit of a step back this year. The second toughest is a neutral site game in Jacksonville. So
it could be Missouri. It could be Missouri at home. I don't know. But gee whiz, that's really murderer's row right there. And
the thing about this is, and then this is the debate, and this is what's going to be fascinating. Should Georgia win this weekend, which they are a 2-touchdown favorite, it'll be interesting to see what the selection committee does when their first rankings come out, because every litmus test tells you the team that's got the 2 most impressive wins this year is Ohio State, having beaten Notre Dame and having beaten Penn State. Those are the 2 most impressive wins of anybody that's up there undefeated. What Washington has done is impressive, having done what they did at Oregon, but then they did that at home. You go through and you look at the schedule with impressive wins, and it's what you have to ask yourself, what's more impressive to you? Teams beating good teams at home, on the road. To me, beating good teams at home are nice. Beating good teams or great teams on the road is monumental.
Well, and you could throw Texas in there with that. Yeah, they have a great win. They have a great win on the road.
Yeah, and I just kind of look at all this stuff and I say to myself, I'm like, okay, well, look, gang, right now what Georgia is Georgia is right now what Ohio State was a decade ago, 15 years ago, when they danced through the Big Ten. Everybody like, they really haven't played anybody in that conference. They really haven't played. That's what Georgia's doing now, just because of the way the schedule lined up, what Ohio State did 10, 15 years ago, and we all hammered Ohio State for not having played anybody. But Georgia, it's like, well, you know what? Well, they're still the champions, which is true. But have they played a top 10 team? Have they played a top 10 team away from home? Where you've got all these teams in the top 5 that have played multiple top 10 teams.
Well, except Michigan. My God, Michigan has not played a ranked team. Okay, they haven't played a ranked team. And I guess the Michigan fans going to sit there and say, well, that's not our fault, JC. Well, okay, whatever. But every stinking year you guys get thrown into this college football playoff, you get run over. TCU runs it up on you. Georgia runs it up on you. Alabama runs it up on you. Everybody runs it up on Michigan in the big game. Everybody. And I don't want to hear about Ohio State. Well, we've beaten them the last 2 years. You're 2-40 against them in the last 4 decades. So, or 2 decades. So, whatever, Michigan. And then all this noise about Michigan and the sign stealing and all this. I read something where
they're in trouble.
To what? But are they really? Because here's the thing. Even though they're stealing signs, they still couldn't stop TCU from scoring points, okay? They still couldn't stop the team that Georgia embarrassed. They can steal signs. To me, that's just, okay, maybe that's good for them. But how about this? Good for TCU. They knew that they were stealing signs, and they gave them fake signs. So that's why Michigan couldn't stop them. Or if Michigan knew what they were doing, they still couldn't stop them with the great Aiden Hutchinson out there running all over the place, chasing TCU running backs and wide receivers.
Good old-fashioned tradecraft, baby. Here's the thing, JC, and this is why I think it's a big deal, because the FBI is involved. Now, if the FBI is involved in any good advice for everybody out there, and I know we got this government type of whatever is going on in our country right now. It doesn't matter. If the FBI is hanging around your work or your house, you are in a lot of trouble. All right? You just are. You're in trouble. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how it goes. A couple things on this.
You were going to ask me 3 things or something. Seth. You had 3 questions.
Yes. Okay. This game, I've got. I teased. I'm all over the place here. I teased the Arkansas game just for this reason, because Steve Russell, who hosts, of course, his show Sports Scene noon to 2, he and I were talking yesterday. He's like, more people care about these black jerseys than care about the Georgia-Florida game. It's like, this is ridiculous. He was right. He had more people emailing him an interaction about the black jerseys. So we're here to drop a little knowledge on all of you. I actually talked to a friend that's a chemist, understanding molecules and heat and things of that nature. JC, if the temperature is 75 degrees and you wear an all black moisture wicking jersey, which they will be wearing, if it's 75 degrees out, how many degrees do you think that adds to your body?
1.
You're correct. 1. So it's a factor of 2 for every one that you go up. So if it's 75 degrees and you have a black jersey on, it's 76 degrees for you. If it's 85 degrees and you have a black jersey on, it's 87 degrees for you. If it's 95 degrees and you have a black jersey on, it's 98 degrees for you. So JC, these black jerseys at high noon are going to be the equivalent of you eating a cinnamon candy.
Yeah, I'm more kind of despondent about the idea of another noon game. That's what sucks for me. This will be 2 noon games for our local economy not to take advantage of, because nobody wins in noon games except the guys in the media. And they chose to be there. It's not like anybody's forcing them to, but the fans can choose too. But the noon game is so anticlimactic to me. And they were happy at Ohio State when they beat Penn State, which, by the way, they are 9-1 against Penn State under James Franklin, who's one of the most overpaid coaches in the history of college football. But I think that those fans hated the noon idea. Nobody really enjoys it except, I guess, the TV folks. They did a good number with Ohio State and Penn State for their big noon game, but none of the 99,000 fans there, and I knew one of them, were happy about getting up at 6 a.m. and starting their football day, because after the game, who's got any energy left for the rest of the day? And so that's how they're going to do it here in Gainesville for the Arkansas game. But that's next week, Seth. I've got to think about Georgia right now. This is Georgia. I couldn't care two craps about Arkansas, and they're 2-17. It's Georgia right now, and this is a chance for Florida to stay in control of its own fate and get to Atlanta for the first time in years. And it would really be fun if we could see Florida and Alabama play again in the SEC championship game.
It's a good thing you bring this up, because to me, at 5-2, Billy Napier and Florida are right where they should be in a realistic rebuild. That's the phrase I've used for the last 2 years. Realistic rebuild. What Mike Norvell, and I know we got Loreno, Benware firing off Florida State stuff here, and I'll get to you in a second, bud. But what Mike Norvell did at Florida State was a realistic rebuild. They were terrible his first year, won 2 or 3 games, then knocked on the door of 500, came to the swamp and got beat, didn't get bowl eligibility. Last year went, 10 games, and this year a national title contender, right? It was a real, 2 wins, 5 wins, 10 wins, realistic rebuild. So what Napier do? 6 wins. Now he's got 5, on pace for 7 or 8, 5, 8. It's a realistic rebuild under Billy Napier here. 2 years ago, 3-score loss to Georgia. Last year, 2-score loss to Georgia. So JC, if this team loses, and I know it's like, we want to win. I get it. But if this team is within a touchdown in the fourth quarter, that shows you the progress. And then you've got the reinforcements coming in, because the one thing, and Graham Mertz and up front and Ricky Pearsall, that's all great. The one thing Florida does not have, that Georgia has, are 5-star All-Americans coming off the bench for depth in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, for depth, and
Florida
I think
does not have that, and that's how you win these games.
And I don't think they have it in the defensive front 7 yet either. Nope. But I will say this about rebuild, Seth, and you'll agree. It's a lot different today, and it's much more expedient today than it has been in the past. Look at Oklahoma. Look at TCU last year. They did it with 2 things, NIL and transfer portal. Those 2 things make rebuilds much quicker. And if a coach knows what he's doing, and if he's earning the money that he's being paid, he shouldn't take 3 or 4 years to rebuild a program like in the old days. Because Brett Venables is showing you right now that the transfer portal is pretty damn good. And so is Dabo Swinney by not using it. And look at Clemson. They're tanking, losing to teams like Miami and Florida State now. And we have very easy rules to get kids into your school now with the transfer portal and the NIL that's available at every single school if they so choose to use it. So to me, rebuilds have to be, well, they shouldn't take nearly as long as they used to. It's not like recruiting taking 3 or 4 years and giving this coach all that time. Those days are over. And I'll tell you right now, if John James Fisher, who, by the way, has a worse record than Kevin Sumlin at this point in his tenure at Texas A&M, doesn't get it together by, I'd say, the end of the year, then after the Texas game next year when they lose, he will be fired next season. That's my call on John James Fisher, in spite of the 50 or 60 million that's going to cost them to pay him next year. He's not going to be fired this year. It'll happen as after the Texas game next year when they lose to Sark and the Longhorns.
JC, Seth Harp on Sports with you here. PodUp with Matthews in the morning on this Friday, Florida Georgia Eve, brought to you in part by Radware, family-owned business that prides itself on excellent customer service while providing quality, affordable promotional products, customized apparel.
Got one more thing for you. This guy, Lincoln Riley, that Shane loves so much, who doesn't use one side of the football in a game. Lincoln Riley's record at Southern Cal with Caleb Williams is exactly the same as Clay Helton's at this point at 17-5. The great Lincoln Riley, who doesn't have defense.
I wish I had
hole in the head.
I'd throw money at you if you had any. That's good. That's good stat.
17-5, his same record as Clay Helton.
Well,
is the great Lincoln Riley, who can't figure out how to stop anybody on third down and never has.
Yeah. What's interesting about this is, you've got a generational quarterback out there.
Yeah, and they're 17. They're not winning anything. They lost 2 games already, and they may lose another. I wouldn't be surprised if Oregon State ran them out of the building.
Generational quarterback, and you've taken a step back.
Yeah. USC.
So the question I have for you then is, if you're Lincoln Riley and the Bears have the number 1 pick, which would be Carolina's pick, and the Bears say, hey, how would you and Caleb like to come to Chicago? Wouldn't you leave USC to go run the Bears?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, I don't know about Lincoln Riley right now. I mean, I know that he and Caleb Williams have a thing going, but they've lost twice. And they're not winning the Pac-12, and Utah owns them. So, you know what? If I'm the Bears, I don't even know if Caleb Williams is my pick. How about that? What do you think of them apples? So, you know, there's a lot of – I mean, you may think Caleb Williams is pick, but I don't – I'm not so sure he's the first pick, to tell you the truth. There's a couple other good quarterbacks out there, and Chicago's got one right now that can get the ball in the end zone even though he has trouble often. They got nothing around Justin Fields to help him. And I'm not saying Justin Fields knows what he's doing either, but I am telling you the Bears have multiple issues, and I don't think Lincoln Riley is the answer to fix them because this guy only plays one side of the football, and you can't do that in the NFL or anywhere, really.
The other name is Jim Harbaugh, too, so think about that.
Well, sure, it's Jim Harbaugh.
If he wants to jump ship. Let's see, I got some messages rolling in here. Loreno, Benware, a couple one coming in. FSU, they played ranked opponents. They're going to be the JC. They're going to win the national championship. Also, they're a football playoff team. They probably all have their hands full with Louisville, though. Florida loses by 21. Can't stop the run, and clock it's bad. All right, Loreno, let's do this. $1,000. $1,000. I get Florida in 21 points. I don't have $1,000, but Loreno, if you give me Florida in 21 points for $1,000, if I'm wrong, I will give $1,000 to your charity of choice. If I'm right, Loreno, you have to move to Juarez, Mexico, and denounce your American citizenship.
Well, Larry is a longtime listener. Larry is a faithful guy, and I like what Larry has to say because he's objective. He's not subjective, and I think a 21-point loss would be devastating, and I can't see that happening without Brock Bowers running around the field. Florida should be able to be more effective offensively against Georgia than just about any team Georgia's played. Remember, this is a team that beat the impotent Auburn Tigers by 7 points. And not that every game's the same, it's always different. But Florida's going to be the best team that Georgia has seen this season on that side of the football and should be effective throwing it down the field. Now, if Florida goes into hibernation mode and Billy wants to play safe and conservative, then Georgia's going to win by at least 2 touchdowns. Absolutely. But that's not going to happen. I think Billy's figuring this thing out, and I think fans have gotten, in some respect, vindicated with their desire to see this team become more aggressive and go attack the defense. That's how you beat Georgia. But we're going to find out, and I think that's what we're going to see.
Next 4 games, JC. I know we're still looking at Florida, Georgia, but the next 4 games, if Florida can go 2-2, that gets them 7-4 hosting Florida State. Right? I mean, because the next 4 games are Georgia, Arkansas, LSU, Missouri. If you can go 2-2 in those 4, that gets you to 7-4, and that's success. That's a successful season. It's progress. It's progress.
I mean, I guess. I mean, if you end up at 7-5 with losses to your big rivals, LSU, Florida State, Georgia, and then this Kentucky and Utah, I mean, I guess people can say what a great job he's done. He's won 7 games, $1 million per win. I'm not happy with that. I mean, not in today's world where the transformation of teams happens quicker than it used to. But that's what everybody is trying to lead us to believe, that this is what is successful. 7-5 again. Just 1 game better than 6-6. I mean, okay. But you've got a quarterback. Well, I mean, schedule is tougher. But, my man, look at – did you see 24? Did you see that schedule next year? I mean,
look. Next year's everything. Next year's everything. Next year is everything.
That schedule next year is, I think, even more difficult than this one.
It is.
So I look, my expectation levels are just higher. Maybe that's just because I'm an Alabama guy, and I love the Gators too. But damn it, I don't want to see 7-5. I want to see 8-4, 9-3, and I don't know if that's realistic. I hope it is. But it's Missouri and Arkansas. That should be. Well, we keep saying Missouri should be a win, but Brady Cook might light them up for 400 yards. You never know. So,
no, hey, look, and I, but you remember as an Alabama guy, because I was in Huntsville that year. They lost to Louisiana Monroe. It took Nick a little while. It took him in the second
1 year.
John Parker Wilson, everything clicked. Yeah, but the SEC West was bad then.
Well, but they were 12-0 before the SEC championship game in 2008. That 1 year, and we didn't have transfer portal back then, and we didn't have NIL back then either. Now we got it, so let's go. I mean,
but you're talking You're talking about the greatest coach ever in college football.
Oh, I get it. He wasn't thought of that time to be the greatest coach ever. He was vilified for leaving the NFL, but I don't care. Nobody cares. He did what he wanted. It's America. So these coaches do what they want anyway, and they get paid for it.
I don't. So, I again, this is one of these things. Again, I'm looking for progress. Florida's somebody like me that had to lose 25 pounds, and you got to lose a pound or 2 pounds a week. You can't go on a juice cleanse and lose 10 in a day because it's not realistic, not long term.
I just don't see 7-5 with losses to your major rivals as an improvement. I don't.
Got Tennessee this year, lost to Utah. I know. I get it. I understand where you're coming.
They always beat Tennessee down here. They always beat them down here. But I'm talking about, winning a game against a team that you're not favored to beat in an environment that is big time, next level type stuff.
Look,
otherwise,
if this team loses to Georgia, people will be mad. They beat Arkansas, but if they beat LSU at LSU, you'd say progress then at that point, right?
I'd love to see them beat LSU at LSU. That would be progress. Beating Georgia would be progress. Beating Florida State to me would be progress. And
I'll ask you this then: Georgia, LSU, Florida State, if they win one of those 3 teams, is it a successful season?
I think if they can get to 8 wins with 1 win against those teams, I'll give it to you, Seth. Yeah,
that's fair.
Because right now, beating one of those teams, including Arkansas, Missouri, gets them to 8.
Yep.
And so then I would say, okay, we are on the right track here. But going 7-5 with losses to all those others, does not get my motor running at all.
There we go. We found common ground, like Republicans and Democrats, baby. Let's get an A package to Jason and myself. PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Brought to you in part by Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and the surrounding areas. Visit them at peachlanddental.com. Join us on Friday for Peachland Dentistry, JC and the QB's weekend picks. We're here on Friday, so we'll do a couple really quick picks also. What else do we have here? QC Kinetics. Good gracious, Seth. Fell a little bit behind today, didn't I? If you got joint pain in your knees, shoulders, hip, or back that won't go away, check out QC Kinetics for long-lasting relief. No surgery, drugs, or downtime. Schedule your free consultation at QC Kinetics, locations in Ocala and now open in Gainesville as well. 352-400-4550. There we go.
Okay. So you want to pick some SEC games, or you want to pick some games?
But you give me spreads, and I'll make everybody some money.
Let's make you some money then.
Who wants their mortgage paid? Let's do it.
The house money. How about South Carolina catching 15.5 against Texas A&M?
Jeez. Good God.
I mean, good God. South Carolina 15.5. I'm going to take that because I have no confidence in Texas A&M.
Yeah, 15. The game's in Columbia.
It's in College Station.
College Station. That's 3 score, almost 3 score. Okay, I'll take 15.5. I'm going 31-21 A&M, but give me the 15.5.
Boy, South Carolina, I tell you, they've fallen off. How about Mississippi State, who beat Arkansas 7-3 last week, catching 6.5 against Auburn? I'm not so sure Auburn should be laying 6.5 to anybody. I'll take the 6.5 for Mississippi State at Auburn.
I'll give the 6.5. Look,
you're going to lay the 6.5. Okay.
I'll give them 6.5.
I mean, Mississippi State can't score either, and Auburn should lock them down, but Auburn sucks.
That's the fight for bowl eligibility right there, baby.
Yeah, it's a big one for those two. How about Tennessee laying? This is actually quite a big game. This is a border war. This is a game that those fan bases really get into. It's at Kentucky, and Tennessee is laying 3.5. I'm going to take the home team. Give me Kentucky. What happened to Tennessee last week in the second half against Alabama is going to linger, and Kentucky's going to take advantage of it in spite of how badly their quarterback has played. I'll take the home team getting 3.5 against Tennessee.
I'll give Kentucky the 3.5 on this one. I'll take the Vols. I think the Vols are going to finish the season 9-3. And and I in a situation like this, the fact that they did that against Alabama for at least the first half shows me that they have the ability to do it. Now, the hangover, it's a legitimate question. It's a road game. I get it. But Josh Heupel's a good coach.
How about the Utah Utes and their spectacular coach and their great defense? You got me there. You lost me for a minute. Okay, how about Utah Utes with their spectacular coach and great defense, winning at USC last week, playing with backup quarterbacks all year? I mean, he might be doing the job he might be the coach of the year. But let's take Utah plus 6.5 at home against Oregon. Give it to me. I love that.
I think Oregon beats them by 2 touchdowns. I think Oregon.
What? Come on.
I think Oregon's winning the Pac-12, and Oregon is going to the college football playoff. Oregon wins that game by double digits.
Okay. That's bold, and I'll give it to you.
Bo Nix, Heisman.
You do love Bo Nix. Okay, and then how about this Florida game? You know, everybody knows I took Florida plus 15.5. The line has gone down now to the Gators getting 14.
Okay.
My aunt keeps calling me, and I just can't. I can't take this.
No, it's okay.
You have.
Okay, really quick here. Georgia touchdown late in the final 2 minutes, puts Florida away 31-21. It's a great football game, JC. I'll take the Gators in the 14, but Georgia wins 31-21.
God, I can't. I hate picking Georgia.
Huh?
I don't want to pick Georgia. Can I just be a homer right now and call this a big upset because of the Brock Bowers situation and the fact that Graham Mertz might play his best game of the year? In spite of Florida's weakness physically on defense, and I think they are weak. I think the Gators are soft on defense. I just do. I saw what South Carolina and Kentucky did to them. I think the offense is going to be enough to overcome that. Yeah. And somehow the Gators are going to win a miracle game, 35-33 against the Georgia Bulldogs, because I just hate Georgia. So how about that?
All right, there we go. He is JC. I am Seth Harp. PodUp with Matthews this morning has been brought to you in part by Ruse-Auger State Farm Insurance. Dedicated insurance professionals ready to help your life go in the right direction with the right insurance options for you. Visit ograinsurance.com. Give them a call. 352-240-1779. 352-240-1779. Tim Malone writing in. Who is this goof? Pacers. Hey, the Pacers beat the Wizards by 30 the other night, and this goof just paid your mortgage with his picks, JC, is what this goof just did. There you go.
Oregon. You ain't winning that game by 2 touchdowns.
Seth Harp's your daddy, Tim Malone. I'm your daddy. All right,